Hello, I have a question. How difficult can it be to get a car back on the road after sitting for over 2 decades? Or better yet, how difficult can it be to do it correctly? You see, in the summer of 2019, I managed to get this 1978 Datsun Z car running and driving for the first time after sitting for 17 years. However, the engine had no power, pressing the brake pedal was merely a suggestion, one of the wheels started smoking and the whole thing was still very much falling apart. Simply put, the car was dog shit. And as of today, 4 years later, it's in even worse shape. And more specifically, it's back to not running at all. But even if it did still run, the car wouldn't be in any condition to pass the state safety inspection that's required to actually register it. But this time, that changes. Today, we're gonna get this car drivable, reliable, and with a bit of luck, on the road legally for the first time since 2002. How bad can it be? Now, it may seem counterintuitive, but this endeavor doesn't start with getting the car running again, because it doesn't matter if it can run and drive. So, I'm gonna rebuild all 4 brakes. A lot of old cars utilize drum brakes, which work by expanding 2 shoes outward, pressing them against the inner wall of the spinning drum that the wheel is attached to. Whereas a lot of cars nowadays have disc brakes, which work by squeezing 2 pads against a thin rotor that the wheel is attached to. Datsun, knowing that variety is the spice of life, decided to have both. Which for me, just means multiple ways they can be a pain in the ass. There we go. Oh, good lord, this is heavy. Yeah, this is basically a glorified paperweight. The reason this was so hard to get off is because both pistons are completely seized in place, so it wasn't even functioning in the first place. Luckily, the driver's side one came off just fine, however, it wasn't in much better shape. The brake pads were also very stuck in place, as well as one of the pistons in this caliper too. That's 3 out of 4. So if my math checks out, the front brakes were operating at only 25% capacity when I drove the car originally. Lots of heat and penetrating fluid are usually the answer to stuck pistons, but after hours of no success, I eventually resorted to clamping the hell out of this guy, and that finally broke it free. There we go. There we go. But then it got stuck again. Once the caliper was split in half, I was able to remove the hydraulic seals, thus finishing this teardown. And yes, I did use vice grips with serrated jaws on what's supposed to be a sealing surface, but these pistons are so pitted from all the rust, they were always going to have to be replaced. And getting replaced is pretty much the story with every component here. This may look like a lot to restore, but if you take away everything that won't be reused, it's really just the caliper bodies that need work. Wow. For cast iron, these cleaned up surprisingly well, though I suppose that might be due to the fact that 1, ultrasonic cleaners are amazing, and 2, these calipers are zinc plated from the factory, meaning minimal oxidation. However, with brake fluid being hygroscopic, a lot of rust still formed where it leaked past the seals. But all of that can be knocked back with a brass wire wheel. It's aggressive enough to remove the loose rust, but not enough to mar the cast iron surface and create sealing issues. Or at least, God, I hope so. But as far as prep for rebuilding this goes, that's literally it. So with a $5 seal kit, $20 worth of brand new pistons, and the sobering realization that I could have just purchased brand new brake calipers for less money, we were ready to go. Just pop in the hydraulic seal, the piston, and the dust seal, do that one more time, bolt them together, and there you go. Fully rebuilt brake caliper. The only thing now is to install the new brake pads along with their associated hardware. Though I just realized I'm missing the anti-squeal shims that go on the brake pads. And that's because they were fused to the old pads. Whoever did the previous brake job must have thought that where the service manual says to dab on a tiny amount of grease, it actually meant cover the shit out of them in industrial strength glue. But hey, we've all been there. The passenger side caliper was of course also rebuilt. It took a lot more heat and a lot more force to break the pistons free, but after that, the process was entirely the same, leaving us with 2 fully functional front brakes. Well, hypothetically. These are fully rebuilt and should operate as brand new, but they'll only be as effective as their counterparts. So not bad. Now, all of this work would of course be worthless if I did nothing about the brake lines. The hard sections were simply cleaned up, but the rubber segments were replaced entirely with brand new ones. And once those were installed and everything torqued to spec, that's it. We're done with the front brakes. So now, the rear. Well, that's the last time I use a thunderstorm transition. I've actually never rebuilt drum brakes before. I've done disc brakes a million times, but never drums. And to be honest, they kinda scared me. Instead of just one thing that simply slides off the car, it's a bunch of stuff held together by very tight springs. But once I got it all apart and cleaned off, it actually didn't seem so daunting. I just had to reset the auto adjuster, add grease where there'll be metal on metal contact, and install the new parts exactly where the old ones were. Really, it's only difficult if you, I don't know, forget to install the new wheel cylinder first.
Oh shit.
This guy is what pushes the shoes outward when you press the brake pedal, so it's kind of important that it's there. And you may think being mindful of that made the second side go a lot faster, but no, it's actually going faster because I sped the footage up. Okay, the drum brakes are rebuilt, so now just time to do something about the drums themselves. These still sound great, but the insides are completely trashed. And there are replacements available online, but the only ones available at the time of filming were for $70 each. That is a little bit out of my budget right now, so what if there's a way to save the ones I already have? Houston, arguably one of the cities of all time. The traffic is awful, urban planning horrendous. It is home to one of the widest freeways in the entire world. All this to say, the severe car dependency problem my hellscape of a city has is also coupled with an overabundance of car repair shops. Car repair shops that have the specialized equipment capable of resurfacing my original brake drums for a very good price, no less. So, why did I try to do it myself? I don't know. I don't know. I do know, however, that all that really has to happen to make these drums at the very least usable again is for the surface to be stripped of any and all rust. So similar to how I once chucked an engine valve into a drill to uniformly clean it, the same principle can be applied here, only this time with a free bench grinder and $3 worth of 3D printer filament. With only a few measurements, 15 minutes in CAD software, and just a general disregard for my own safety, I was able to install this brake drum where it should probably never be installed. And let me be the first to say it, this is a bad idea.
Oh my god. Holy shit, that is terrifying.
What I ended up doing was never letting it get to full speed. I would ramp it up, turn it off, and while it was slowing down but still very fast, knock back all the rust. I did that over and over, wet sanding with 220 grit sandpaper, until this wasn't looking like such a bad idea after all. And I only lost 3 fingers. The results are far from what a professional would do. Really, really far. But the surface finish is absolutely good enough to work, and at the very least, way better than how it was when I drove the car previously. So this little experiment actually kinda worked. Now, with that being said, this was absolutely not worth it. Cantilevering such a heavy object so far out from where any rotating mass was designed to be on a bench grinder with a piece of plastic was downright dangerous and, without a doubt, one of the stupidest things I have ever done. Sorry. One of the stupidest things I've ever done twice. Press it. Okay, yeah, no, that's good. We got functioning brakes. Okay, let's see how awkward I look doing this. Got rear brakes. Got front brakes. And we got the parking brake working too. We got all the brakes working. And more than just functioning brakes, that means the car is gonna pass inspection. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? They're laughing because the Texas DMV actually requires 20 things to be up to snuff in order for a car to be deemed roadworthy, and brakes are only one of them. Surprisingly though, there isn't anything in this safety list about rust or even just general structural integrity. Given that this is criteria for a safety inspection, that is a complete disregard for actual safety and insanely irresponsible of the Texas government. However, it does mean that I actually don't have to do anything about the frame rails that are literally peeling off the car, so yeehaw. I will do something about them when I fully restore this thing, but not today. So, we have brakes, and we actually already had all this stuff too, but we don't have anything regarding electronics, because for some reason, all of them decided to stop working. No lights, no horn, no wipers, no wait, just kidding. Everything literally just came back on. And I'm not gonna question that. Actually, everything except for the headlights came back on. These have honestly never worked since I've owned the car. And oh, now I think I know why. Luckily for me, I have the Cigar Box of Wonders. I mentioned it in the first video, but the original owner of the car, the guy that sold it to the guy that I bought it from, absolutely loved the thing, going as far to keep a logbook of every purchase ever made, as well as a surplus of replacement glass fuses. So with a couple of those popped in place, the headlights came right on. Until, of course, I lost all power again. Oh, come on. It was all just on. The battery is perfectly fine at 12.7 volts, and none of the fuses are popped. So, what's going on? Well, it took a bit of sleuthing, but I eventually realized that all 4 of the fusible links have insanely loose connections, with relays clicking on and off, and the dome light flickering just from barely touching the wires. Seeing as how these are essentially the main fuses that feed every single sub-circuit in this car, I would very much like to not lose power when driving over a speed bump. So to hopefully rectify this, I cleaned every terminal and squeezed down on the spade connectors so that there'll be a really tight connection. And that seemed to fix everything. Dome light is on, shining bright, and no flickering whatsoever when I wiggle this around. So yeah, these all feel solid. We should be good to go. And instead of using the old covers that are broken, my dad actually bought brand new ones 4 years ago when we first got the car. So thank you, Dad. Okay, so to summarize, we have headlights, high beams, with the beam indicator working, wipers, plate lights, running lights, brake lights, left signal, right signal, hazards, horn, and reverse lights. Oh shit, we don't have reverse lights. Well, technically, reverse lights aren't on the list, so we actually have everything already checked off. But if I'm here, I might as well take care of them. Ooh, you know what? These rust holes, you know, the ones that are caused by water liking to pool here? Well, they're pretty much directly above the reverse lights. Yeah, the bulbs and sockets were completely rusted together. But after pulling that out, cleaning up the connector, and getting a new bulb in here, yeah, it still didn't work. At this point, I realized it might be a good idea to check the actual reverse switch on the transmission. And when I did that, oil started pouring out of the electrical connection. Ooh, God. That's bad. I think the reverse light switch might be faulty. So I made a little jumper just to verify that this was indeed the issue, and sure enough, the lights came right on. So one brand new switch later, we finally have reverse lights. So the car, for real this time, is actually gonna pass inspection. At least as soon as I figure out why the engine won't turn on. Right. Well, last time the engine wouldn't start, the culprit turned out to be dirty fuel injectors, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's also the case now, because even though I did clean them and added fresh gas, the tank was more than likely contaminated from fuel that had been sitting in there for over 20 years. Gasoline has a really bad habit of oxidizing over time, turning into a solid gummy-like varnish that loves to wreak havoc on everything it touches, including steel gas tanks. So not only do I need to clean the injectors again, but I also need to strip the tank of whatever oxidized fuel still in there, as well as whatever rust that's now there. Hopefully, it's not too bad. For the uninitiated, I hate gas tanks. I went through 3 trashed ones on my Pontiac Fiero restoration project, each full of rust and pinholes before finally getting a good one, and was all but forced to repair the absolutely destroyed tank my GPZ 1000RX came with when the only other clean replacement in the world was seized by US Customs when I tried importing it to America. And now there's this. As sure as I am that everyone wants to see me repair yet another gas tank, I don't. So this time, I'm gonna let someone else deal with this. It took a few phone calls, but I eventually found a radiator shop that was not only willing to get within 10 feet of this thing, but also confident that they could fix it. And after a few days, they turned this into this. It turns out, paying a professional to do a job for you might just be a good investment after all. Easiest gas tank fix of my life. Well, except for the fact that it fucking wasn't. While being rust-free is definitely an important piece of criteria for a well-functioning gas tank, another, arguably more important piece of criteria is that fuel should actually be able to flow out of it. You may say, Ronnie, you just forgot to clean the injectors, that's why the car's not running. And that is true, my excitement got the better of me and I forgot to do that. However, if fuel was flowing and consequently pressurizing, then it should have exploded everywhere the second I pulled off the return line. But it was bone dry. And the smoking gun was that not an ounce of fuel was even coming out of the pump directly. There is undoubtedly a clog in the gas tank. $200. I paid $200 to have this professionally fixed so that I wouldn't have to. And it's not even fixed. Let me ask you a question. What size shirt do you wear? Hello, and welcome to Ronnie's Automotive, where there's absolutely no gas tank repairs. That's right, I'm done. This shirt commemorates the last time I am ever going to repair a gas tank on this channel. So if you too hate gas tanks with every ounce of your body, want to support my projects, or maybe you're just looking for something to add to your growing beige collection, then call 1-800-RON-AUTO and pick up one of these shirts today. Don't actually call that number. We checked and it doesn't go to anything, but it might by the time this video comes out, so just click the link in the description, right below the one for my Patreon. Anyways, back to the clog. So yeah. This was pretty bad. Not even 120 psi of air pressure was enough to clear all the rust that still must be trapped in here. So, if not air, what about chemicals? With a bit of vinyl tubing and a funnel, I was able to fill the entire pickup tube with Evaporest. A few hours of that soaking should hopefully do the trick, but going a step further, I also cobbled together this simple filtration loop. Using a cheap 12-volt fuel pump and a motorcycle battery, the idea was that I'll be able to now suck out the clog now that it's been loosened, trapping all the rust particles in this filter. And that did not work. At all. No, it's still clogged. Hold on. What if it's not rust? Now that is a very good question, and apparently I wasn't the first to ask it. Digging through some old forum posts, I learned that Nissan manufactured these tanks with a very fine metal mesh filter on the inlet of the pickup tube, where not rust, but varnish loves to embed itself into. So if it's oxidized fuel we're dealing with, we'll instead need denatured alcohol. It's kinda like regular natured alcohol, but you just have to steal it from its home and force it to live a life in captivity. But with a pickup tube filled with that, the level was going down within minutes. And after letting it sit overnight, what if I use compressed air now? I think I just blew out the clog. Yeah, it's not building up at all, it's just flowing straight down. Oh my god, I blew out the clog. Holy crap, I did it. But we're not in the clear just yet. Doing that just exploded varnish everywhere inside the swirl pot, so I whipped out the filtration loop system yet again, and this time it started working immediately. In fact, it worked so well that the filter clogged within the first 30 seconds of running it and had to be cleaned out. And actually, over the course of the next half hour or so that I was running this thing, that happened multiple times. But eventually, I got to a point where nothing more was coming out, which was perfect timing because the switch decided that it was done. Holy shit. Good oil pressure, and the fuel level is not below empty like it was before. And maybe we're overcharging the battery, so that needs to be looked at. But this thing is working. Well, if you consider running horribly as working, then yes, it's working great. Basically, it just needs a tune-up. And the first thing I did was an oil change. While it may not be that big of a factor as far as how its running goes, it was something I had yet to do in the 4 years that it's been since I've owned the car. And that is, not good. I also went ahead and swapped out the fuel filter, topped off the coolant, and swapped in a silicone coupler to replace the factory intake boot that had a slight vacuum leak. Once that was all done, the car was running perfectly. Or, at least I thought it was. I thought it sounded good, Roman thought it sounded good, but as soon as I got the wheels back on and tried taking it on its maiden voyage post-repairs, the engine had no power. The brakes worked though, so that's cool. The engine revved perfectly fine in neutral, but as soon as it was in gear and under load, it struggled. A great way to test if a cylinder is dead or not is to pull the spark plug wires while the car is running. And if the engine stumbles, that means it was working. But if there's no change whatsoever, that means it wasn't doing anything to begin with. And it turns out, the spark plugs were last changed 40 years ago, and they were insanely dirty. So with a fresh head of plugs in, and a brand new wire set, will this car finally run correctly? So to answer the question I asked in the beginning of this video, it was very difficult. Going from a car that hadn't run properly in 21 years to one that'll start right up as if it was brand new took months of work. And I can only imagine how much more it'll take once I finish the garage renovation and start on this car's full restoration. So thanks for watching, buy a shirt from the link down below, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.